Streaming to YouTube. Alright, so I'll just share on the screen. You're ready?
Okay. Calling to order the January 19th, 2023 business meeting, regular full commission hearing of Historic Resources Commission here in 111 North Front Street, room 204. The time is 4:00 p.m. Our next business meeting will be Thursday, February 2nd, 2023 at noon here in room 111 North Front Street, room 204 here on the second floor. And then with the next hearing of the commission being Thursday, February 16th, 2023 at 4 p.m. Also here in room 204, 111 North Front Street on the second floor. If you could raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth in your testimony before the commission this evening?
I do, Jacqueline Leda.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jacqueline. And introduction of the commissioners here and present, starting on my left.
Hi, Mega Sinha.
Tamika Baba.
Joseph McCabe.
Mike Ford.
Clyde Henry.
Wonderful. Thank you. Moving on to public forum this evening. Are there any items for public forum?
Items for public forum.
Wonderful. Hearing none, we are going to move on to approval of the staff approvals.
I move that we approve the staff approvals.
There is a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Having a motion and a second, is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, motion passes, staff approvals approved. Moving on to the approval of the minutes from the last meeting, which was November 17th, 2022. There was no meeting in December 2022 because we had no agenda.
Make a motion to approve.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any further discussion regarding approval of the minutes? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, motion passes, minutes have been approved. Now on to the staff reports and the applications for certificates of appropriateness.
Okay, so first up, so we've had two applications that were moved to staff approval at the business meeting. So we are starting with number 3, and that is 479 North High Street, or HR 2206-0112. Do you want to bring the applicant up, or I don't know how, the major C does a little different?
No, typically we have the applicant come up if they're available here to participate.
Mr. Chair, Clyde Henry here. I'm recusing myself of this one.
Wonderful. If you could let the record reflect that Clyde is recused on this case. And if the applicants could each raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth in your testimony before the commission this evening?
I do.
And if you could each state your full name and association with the property for record.
Elizabeth Pitchford with Ruggles Sign. I'm the sign manufacturer.
Wonderful.
Jack Reynolds, I'm an attorney with Smith and Hale, 37 West Broad Street.
Thank you both. Staff.
Next, this application is proposing new signage, including a new projecting sign, new wall logo signs, new wall signs, and a new window sign. So at the business meeting, the commission asked if staff could list out how much variance there is from the guidelines that are still being sought in its current form. So currently, I think some of the signs do match the size. The ones that don't include the blade sign. So the guidelines state that blade sign should be a maximum of 12 square feet. Currently, the blade sign is proposed to be 22.5 square feet. And then the text, so the applicant recently submitted a revision showing that the Epic Tacos text has been added as part of a registered business name. So that's an update. The amount of signage also differs from the guidelines. Per the guidelines, each ground floor tenant space or building may have one projecting and one wall sign. Currently, there are 4 wall signs and a projecting blade sign proposed. And for the window sign, the applicant has revised the window sign since the last review. The guidelines state that the cumulative area of all window signs should not exceed 25% of the total glass area of the storefront, or 6 square feet, whichever is less. And I think that summarizes the differences from the guidelines on that. So at the business meeting, the commission noted it appears that some of the questions about the stainless steel piece has been addressed, and noted that it helps a lot that the stainless steel piece will not be illuminated. The commission confirmed with the applicant at the business meeting that the only illumination would be the corner sign and the words Agave and Rye. And the commission noted that the application is getting on the right path. The commission asked if the applicant can ensure the rendering show the agave variety test on each side of the corner to be aligned, or the text render. And the commission asked that the rendering itself reflect the metal piece, noting that it seems like there should be some cutouts and less weight than appears in the rendering. And the commission asked that the finish be clarified, so that they understand that the circled image is what is going to be the finish, but want to understand what exactly that finish will be. For example, such as painted, clear gloss, stainless steel, etc. So staff recommends continuing application HR 22-06012 at 479 North High Street to allow the applicant time to revise the application to meet HRC guidelines and code. The basis for the staff recommendation are the short north design guidelines for signage on page 338. Projecting blade side guidelines, also in the short north design guidelines for on page 3.39. The window side guidelines on page 3.40, and the city code 3116.13 standards for site improvements, specifically letter C.
Would the applicant like to add anything before we start into some of our discussion?
I think Elizabeth has talked with the client and will present some of the materials for the B that is going to be removed and will become an architectural component rather than a sign. And as I said at the business meeting, it will not be illuminated. So instead of 4 wall signs, there will only be 2 wall signs that we're proposing. That would be the Agrave and Rye on the 2 facades, one towards High Street and the other towards, what is that street? I forget.
Spruce.
Yes, Spruce. And so in terms of those individual signs are each 15 square feet in size. So the variance there, when you add the 2 of them together, maximum being 25, we're proposing 30 total square feet of wall signage. And again, that's spread between 2 separate facades with 2 separate frontages. And I think we've addressed all of the concerns except for what I think Elizabeth would like to propose in terms of discussing the look of the B and materials that will be made of.
Okay, and I apologize, I went ahead and tried to print this out, and then I'm not supposed to be up there, but maybe we could share it around a little bit. Is that okay?
Yes, please approach and we can pass it along.
Great. So the owner was a bit hesitant on choosing some material only because they wanted to make sure that this is something that can move forward. And so what she did for us is instead make a selection on 3 different materials to see if one of the 3 would be something that would be agreeable with you all. And what is going to be is either this first one. This is a stainless steel material, 14 gauge, any one of the finishes. She likes this one first, then the pebbled effect was her second choice, and then kind of the weathered, almost tree or grass type effect of this one in the middle as her third choice. And again, the 14 gauge material, it would all be laser cut out, and then the finish, which is one thing that has been a big question, it's going to be a powder coated smoked black finish. Okay. Powder coated smoked black, which is hard to represent obviously here. I'd hope to have an actual physical representation, but I thought at least I could print something out for you all to be able to see. So that eliminates the need for that clear coat. There has been a bit of a discussion figuring out how we're going to finish that off. So the powder coating is going to be able to take care of that exterior weather component that I think was a concern. So
all 3 of these are basically a matter of texture then.
yes, that is correct. Then
What
we'll
is that first one? It's hard to tell. I'm not
Yes.
sure what's happening on.
it's just a bubbly
ripple?
effect. Yes, like a rippled effect.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely. And again, she's open to, if you felt like something would be more appropriate in this particular case, she's open to the other options that she had presented as well. Knowing that all of them would be finished in this powder coat finish.
Generally, all I would say is we're not the designer or the architect. We do review for contextually appropriate. You have a much reworked building, so I think, we would say, what does the applicant want to propose rather than essentially, providing you insight. I think,
Certainly. She would like to propose this one.
and by the way, those are all actually to scale.
As far as the
pattern?
the pattern, I would have to, that one, I honestly, I can't answer.
Okay.
I don't know if that is to scale or not. It would seem a bit strong if that's percent for, to scale. It seems like these must be larger because I can't imagine it being like that.
So the rendering that we're looking at right
Yes.
there, is that updated?
Yes, it does.
Okay, so the part I think I'm maybe not following.
Mhm.
If this is all metal, laser cut, black powder coated,
Mhm.
the white that we're seeing, what is the white?
I would, it's gonna have to be a, what they explained to me is that they would have kind of the darker elements and lighter elements within this smoked black finish. So it's going to be lighter. It's not going to be white.
And that's
like that.
not cut through then? Just the
No.
profile of this thing is cut out and then that is still added?
Added, kind of etched on the face of it.
So things that look white might be a gray,
Yes, ma'am.
gray and black.
Yes.
For me, I would appreciate to see that in the rendering with the color that matches a little bit more closely to what you're actually going to propose.
Just to do it.
Yes.
We, and I apologize, I did just learn this at 3 o'clock yesterday, so I was trying to make sure I at least brought you some good representation best as possible.
So the outline is the laser cutting of the
Yes.
bead. In that material.
Mhm.
And then all of the detail, because there's a lot of detail that
There
we're
is.
seeing. It sounds like maybe that's yet to be figured out, how all that detail is actually
How
gonna
it's going to
be.
be accomplished.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
But the big key is knowing that it is going to be, a non-illuminated element. It's going to be flush mounted with kind of countersunk screws to the surface. And, it's going to be in that, like I said, in that powder coat finish.
And maybe in an effort to kind of chip away at things on this application, sort of. So I know based on, I've been here through the length of this case.
Yes, sir.
The agave and rye, we asked them to kind of flush it out and make it look and feel not right. We were granting, I think, although staff has suggested a continuation, I think some of our considerations for varying from the short north guidelines, which we would normally follow, would be the unique architectural expression or lack of expression on this building overall. So this is the architecture in some ways. And then looking at it and saying, well, this is a corner element, a corner tower almost, if you will. And so maybe being beyond the guidelines for, say, like the blade sign, for example, it seems to fit in context and is not completely out of character when considering the rest of the building. So I'm just wondering if we can sort of, even if we're struggling maybe with the B, is there pieces of this that may still be ready to go? Like, how does the rest of the commission feel about the words agave and rye? That now has been kind of, we've asked the applicant a lot of, I think, questions about that. Maybe we're there on that in my mind. The blade sign has kind of gotten to where I think, we've said it does exceed it, but we might offer consideration for a unique scenario of the corner, the condition, the existing building. And the other, I think the last thing was,
The door.
just the door on the back, they've removed the components we've asked them to remove. So are there pieces of this that we can even wipe off the table here at this point?
Yeah, I would agree. And then I guess the question is, so the B, if it's an architectural feature just for record and posterity, are we considering it a sign or not a sign?
In technical definition, the commercial image is still a sign, but the material, like, it sounds to me like the commission is taking that into consideration. Just for our standpoint, if it was painted or if it's a traditional sign, commercial image would still be a sign.
And this is one of those, in my opinion, like gray areas, if this building were built 100 years ago and this was on a cast stone element set into the tower of a building, let's say, it would have just been part of the architecture. And I think the key thing here is potentially there's an expression of unique materials now where we don't often see etched out, highly detailed stainless steel. It's not illuminated. I think that, helps to change it. And ultimately, because the building is simply stripes and some storefront, when does it cross over out of being a sign into architecture? I almost think it is an architectural modification at this point.
That's what I think that's what I'm leaning in, so, but I think it'd be good to have it on record, whatever, so it's not considered a sign.
Agreed.
So that it doesn't get used as a precedent for something in the future. And we've had the same gray area discussion with other signs too, is it art mural, or is it art, is it sign? But yeah, I'm good with discussing just the rest of it, which is more apparently sign.
Yeah.
The only hesitation I really have, and I think this has been a little bit of ongoing, and we do appreciate the effort you all are putting in trying to really display what you're after to us. But I think we've had a couple discussions over past meetings where the representation isn't really accurately depicting what we're talking about. And so I think there's still a little bit of a disconnect. And I don't know if that extends to other elements or not. At this point, I don't know if I have that confidence, maybe others do. But it seems like the way that we're showing something and then how we're talking about it can be two different things. So I'm just wondering, with the other elements, is there anything else that we have to look at? Or is that something we can confirm through staff approval, making sure that the execution of this is actually how it's being represented?
And I appreciate that very much, because I understand the hesitancy on going through all the different versions of the B has been a bit of a struggle, not only for us, but for the owner as she's trying to develop that. What I can assure you is that the other items are straightforward. I can answer any questions that you would have on the signs themselves, because that is something that I'm making, and I can give you the details and answer questions or show you examples of whatever you would like, throughout the community, so that to ensure that you know exactly what is expected there. And I tried to show representations for the blade sign on how we were going to, cover up the opacity of the middle of all the letters, so that just a little bit around the perimeter was going to show up. And I think I submitted, I don't know if Jacqueline has seen the photos, but we submitted for that showed example of how that was going to work. I brought that if you all want to see it again. But no, I'm more than happy on the other elements. I can certainly give you any information.
Understood. So yeah, there's the acknowledgement, there's work to do with the B. But,
Yes, sir.
But the other elements are more straightforward.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Great, thank you.
Mhm. Yes, that's it. Those were the examples. The difference on those was that this is actually in Perrysburg, Ohio. The center of the letters is in black because we needed the contrast to the white wall behind it, whereas we need just the opposite in this particular case. So the centers will be white, the opaque centers will be white versus the black. Yeah.
And of course, this is an illuminated version of the B, though, where we would not have.
Correct. Yes,
There
that
will be
is.
no illumination of the B.
No, it'll be removed. Absolutely. It will be removed. That's the old one, isn't it?
Yeah,
That's the old one.
where the upgraded riot.
Yeah, where it's off a little bit, yeah. There we go.
Do we want to consider what he was suggesting, splitting it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it might be based on the progress made by the applicant, an appropriate time to think about approving the new projecting sign, the new wall signs, and the new window sign portion of the applications. I think continuing the logo portion, i.e. the B, would be appropriate for one thing, which is if we can find out more about the sample of the material, if that is even possible.
Yes. At this point, I feel very confident we can do something. Sample of the material and the depiction of the detail.
Likewise, if staff could actually find out the technicality or legality of this thing being defined as, because it's been submitted as a new wall logo sign versus it actually being revised in the application to be an architectural alteration for a new architectural feature, if that is inappropriate, is appropriate or inappropriate in this case, if we could have additional advice on that.
Sure, I mean, I'm fairly confident just because we have things like, submitted as murals that turn out to be commercial copy, but I can definitely double check.
So
Do we need to I'm so sorry, do we need to potentially rewrite that portion
Well,
of the application?
I would be prior to the next meeting, just look for advice from staff and
Yes.
they can work with you if that is needed.
Okay.
But I think the finish seems to be the most uncomfortable part of the B and crown component at this point.
It would be nice to get some portion of it approved so
Yes.
that we can prove to code enforcement
Yeah.
that we are making some progress, so we don't end up in court.
Okay, so I'm gonna try motion. So this is for HR 2206-0112, 479 North High Street. Part A, motion to approve new projecting sign, new wall signs, and new window sign,
As is presented.
as is presented.
Wonderful. There is a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, having a motion and a second, the only further thing I'd like to add for record was again to reiterate and state for record, any consideration for this approval would be the unique features of this sort of being remodeled or muddled architecture and having this corner element or a unique corner condition, not found quite often on other buildings or within the district, where this sort of becomes the feature on the building. And being appropriate scale and context. There plenty to be found in record that the applicant has removed a lot of early signage features that they had been proposing.
Do we vote?
But anybody else have any other further points they want to add? No. Okay, no further discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion passes. And then if I could have a motion for the second part of this.
So HR 2206-012, 479 North High Street, Part B. This is a motion to continue the new wall logo signs. And the note here is that we will have staff do some research and give us some more guidance on if this is even a sign or architectural feature, and we can discuss it with that context.
And additionally, if the applicant could also provide a finished sample. So if there's a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Having a motion and a second, any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate it. Thank you.
Moving on to our next case, HR 23-01-008, 1445 Summit Street. If you could raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth in your testimony before the commission this evening?
I will.
If you could state your full name and association with the property for record.
Yeah, Matt Leisure, Principal Landscape Architect with Designing Local, and we're representing the owner today.
Wonderful. Thank you. Jack.
This application is proposing a new parking lot fencing. Originally, there was approved fencing, which is part of HR 1910-007A. This was not installed due to visibility and safety concerns. So temporary chain link fencing, which is approximately 6 to 8 feet high, has been installed. The applicant is requesting to temporarily retain that chain link fencing for the safety reasons. And the applicant has noted they will identify a firm, which they have prior to 2023, and that a proposal for new permanent fencing to be submitted for review and construction be completed in 2023. So at the January business meeting, the commission asked what the duration of the temporary fencing will be, and the applicant noted that they have hired the new firm to help design it and expect that they will come before the commission with a new fence proposal for the February hearing. The commission noted that they can continue the application at the January hearing to allow the applicant time to submit the new fencing proposal for that February hearing. In the meantime, the applicant can submit any updates or proposals to staff. The commission noted that the applicant can submit a conceptual application as well, so the commission can provide guidance early in the process. And the applicant has reached out to staff, and I believe that is the plan to submit a conceptual application for next month's meeting. The commission asked if the applicant intends to install a similar design to what had been approved in 2019. And per the applicant, they found that the previously approved design created a dark obstruction instead of allowing light through as intended. So it'd be something different. The commission encouraged the applicant to look into what the city has done in regard to solutions for headlight screening in the past to be sure the applicant is meeting any variances that may be required. So staff recommendation is to recommend continuing application HR 230108 at 1445 Summit Street. And this is to allow the applicant time to submit the proposed fence design for the February meeting. That recommendation is based on the city code standards for site improvements, specifically letters A and B, as well as the Columbus Register of Historic Properties guidelines for fences on page 76.
Great. And I think just before we turn it over, you to add any comments you want to add? I think the general consensus of the business meeting is we don't have to actually provide approval of a temporary construction fence. It's a kind of a health, welfare, life safety issue. If they've got a temporary construction fence or something, it is what it is. It looks like to be a temporary fence of some nature. I don't think that looks permanent. But I guess, does the applicant want to add anything beyond just continuation until we see a concept, or do you have any questions for us?
So just a couple general comments. So right now, the parking lot is about 5 feet above the sidewalk. So in a typical screening situation, you'd have at least some visibility into a parking lot over the 3-foot required headlight screening. In this case, you're really looking right at the elevation of the parking lot pavement. So adding that 75% fence that was approved before is a big concern because there's illegal activity happening in the parking lot at night. So that would just continue or contribute to the lack of visibility. So what we're looking at is probably a variance on that 75%. And we're also looking at using some of the design elements from the previous submittal, like the medallion from the building that's on the previous concepts that were submitted. So we'll likely have something like that for the next submittal. So we'll kind of continue that medallion as part of the design, but also have, something like a 25 to 40%-ish opacity for the fence itself. So that's kind of where we're headed. So if we have any feedback on just that general direction, we'd love to hear it. And then tomorrow we'll be submitting drawings, so we'll have drawings to look at the next meeting.
And I guess I would just say is I'd be interested in seeing the companion proposal for any variances simultaneous, if you can provide that, just
Okay.
since you will need that, and you'll need our support for that, even though we don't approve that.
Right, yes.
Any other thoughts?
It does seem like a unique condition, right? So given the elevation, the request to have a different rather than 75% seems reasonable, right?
It is
Because
the biggest challenge though, because, although it's elevated and the problem seems to be the activity in the parking lot, then it's the reverse is when you have the car that's elevated with the headlights looking out from it is the
Right.
real.
Yeah, and we'll show that a little bit.
I see.
Yeah.
What is across the street?
So there's a residential property across the street, but the house is pretty far up onto Summit. So immediately across the street is, the back of the property. So there's no,
Okay, so.
there's no building.
So the headlights are not shining into somebody's bedroom?
Right.
Yeah.
And we'll show that in some context drawings as well.
Okay,
That actually really helps clarify.
Yeah.
Right, right.
Is there anything specific you would like us to share just you want to share from a conceptual standpoint at this point?
So the medallion, I think, is part of I think that's something that commission like before. So we'll probably simplify the design a little bit and have that be kind of the main pattern. And that will be the basis of the concept. So that's generally where we're headed, looking at a 1/8" kind of laser cut metal panel with posts. So that would be the general thing that we'll submit. And we're working on that right now. So we're developing that, which we'll submit tomorrow.
Is there a motion to continue?
So moved.
Motion, is there a second?
Second.
Hearing motion a second, any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, motion passes.
All right. Thank you. See you next month.
Thank you. Moving on to our next case here. That would be 694 Wilson Avenue.
That's me.
HR 23-01-09. If you could raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth and before the commission this evening?
I do.
Wonderful. Please state your full name and association for the property record.
Zachary J. Cotman,
Wonderful.
property owner.
Thank you.
Okay, this application has been reviewed previously as a conceptual application. It involves roof repair, including replacing all slate with reclaimed slate, replacing deteriorating roof decking, valley flashing, ridge caps and chimney flashing, rebuilding box gutters, replacing the rubber on the flat roof area, replacing the front porch and rear bump out roofing with new EPDM rubber, and rebuilding the aluminum siding was to be removed, framing rebuild, crown molding, and replacing rotted soffit fascia boards. So Sanborn maps indicate a roofing material of slate and metal on all roofs, including the oriel window and front porch. So the oriel window retains original flat seam metal roofing that is needed replacement. No historic photos of the front porch roofing material have been located. There are no applications on file for roofing replacement at this property. A 1956 MLS or multiple listing surface real estate card lists the roofing material in general as slate. An original flat seam metal roof of the oriel window may indicate that metal could have been existing on other roofs, but it's not clear evidence. The applicant has updated the application following feedback from the conceptual review to repair the porch box gutters. So staff recommends approval of application HR 230109-694 Wilson Ave with the following stipulations. And that is that the front porch roofing be replaced with either flat seam metal roofing or asphalt shingles, and repair of the original wood soffit or replace in kind. It's just those two items. Otherwise, we've been able to move the application to staff approval, but because of those two, we're not able to do so. And the basis for the staff recommendation was the city code standards for alterations, specifically numbers 2, 5, 6, and 12, as well as the guidelines for roofing materials on page 44 and gutters and downspouts on pages 45 through 46.
Wonderful. Would you like to add anything before we open up to our discussion?
Sure. One thing is that the porch roof, though has asphalt on it, is technically below the minimum slope that asphalt should be on. So I consider asphalt to be a pretty cheap roof, and if there's a minimum slope you should put it on, I take that as a pretty hard minimum, and it's a little bit below that. Maybe 212 is supposed to be the minimum, and measuring it, it's like 1.8, 1.9. So maybe it's like just on the minimum, but I mean, I don't know. I don't think it should ever have had asphalt on. So I don't think shingles are the appropriate thing for it. And I know that I can't afford to replace it with seamed metal. I've talked to some like architectural metal roofing companies, do some really cool, really nice craftsmanship work, but it's kind of like the gutters. I can't, I talked to somebody about replacing the gutters with metal gutters, a guy in Cincinnati that does mechanically locked seam stuff, and I just can't afford it. So yeah, so I'm hoping to do EPDM on that. Keep the box gutters. I had originally proposed jumping them on the porch, front porch, but I could do EPDM there, basically like around the rest of the box gutters. But I think the flatness of that also kind of means that it would either need to be, seamed metal or some other more flat roof appropriate item. So
I agree with you there. Shingles would not work well on that slope.
yeah,
It might work, but it's really,
they're there, but
so I'm fine with DPD and glad you're keeping all the box gutter while you have to, but I'm glad to see that the box gutters are not becoming an issue. And I like the idea that you're using reclaimed materials. So I'm supportive.
I like slate roofs, and I've enjoyed repairing it, which I've kind of just been patch repairing the pieces that fall out. And it's fun. It's honest day's work.
They literally last
Yeah,
for yeah.
they can last a really long time. Unfortunately, the slate that's on the roof has a classic defect, has a ribbon in it, which is a strip of the rock that's more carbon in it, a little more porous, fails faster, has maybe a 75-year lifespan instead of 100 plus. So that's why, like, I replace a few and all of the others are basically flexible at that ribbon. So they're not, the integrity of most of the original slate it's exceeded the kind of the 75-year expectancy, and they're all kind of falling off. So, but yeah.
Yeah, I agree with Clyde, just from a installation standpoint and even your ability to warrant a product and things like that, there's a minimum. And so I think, yeah, taking that into consideration in terms of appropriate installation, I think you're making a great point about that. Is there a picture we could look at of that roof in particular? Just need to be reminded of what that porch roof looks like.
There should be a photo of it. There we go. I mean, that's from above.
Right, and so from the road and
Can't see it.
you're not gonna be able to see anything.
Can't see. You, like, maybe if you're standing all the way across the boulevard.
Yeah.
Or if you're, in the second floor of one of the houses nearby,
Right,
but, otherwise you can't actually see the top of it, so.
yeah, I think this is a good case to have a little different consideration for that install.
So I actually owned a home in the Brighton Road district, larger than this, but it had all of these same features and all of these same sizes, same gutter configurations. And the flat roof on the front porch originally had like a seamed metal that had been gone over with an EPDM.
Yeah.
And that was the solution at that time, for both, the side bump out, which is the same side bump out you have. A lot of these homes are catalog in the neighborhood, I
Yeah,
think.
this is like right pre-catalog, this exact layout.
There's, must have been the same builder because it's the same
Yeah,
repetitive
A
four-window
bunch of people in
lighthouse.
Chicago were kind of like trading stuff and forming those companies.
And this front roof, yeah, you're up at least 3 steps, I think, when I looked at the frontal of this house and stuff. I don't think shingles is appropriate here. I do think that EPDM is a reasonable solution, especially with the idea that you would keep the box gutters. I mean, to me, that's the critical thing here is doing it right, flashing it right, ensuring it's waterproof, and then keeping the box gutters.
Right,
The main house work, I have no problem with. You kind of got there, but the tinner's red, the slate replacement, rebuilding the box gutters up top. The one thing I do want to bring up is the bump out itself. And is the only thing I want to kind of discuss further. Otherwise, I'm sure there completely with this application is you do have evidence of seamed metal roofing there.
It is seamed metal roofing.
And right now, your replacement would be to go with fully adhered EPDM over the current roof, or would that be removing that metal roof?
It depends on what's like, so when I take the aluminum off of the outside
Mhm.
and can see what's going on with the decking underneath,
Mhm.
might have to figure that out, you know what I
It's
mean?
probably
Like,
barely one by material even.
yeah, I just don't know what the condition is, except that I do know, and it's the same for the rest of the gutters. Since I haven't just removed all of that aluminum, I have a little experience, but not much with it. I know that some of the wood inside is pulp essentially. So it's hard to say exactly what is, how much will need to be replaced. That is one tough part for me.
Yeah.
Also with like saying exactly what I'm gonna do, like, so I want to keep as much, for instance, of the crown molding as possible. And I think that won't be like completely rotted away because it's in a place where it gets to dry out. And I don't even know the style of the, like the
So,
wood underneath.
These pop-outs, usually their pitch is a little different, and sometimes you can see these roofs from the side roads or from the streets or from the other neighboring yards. And so that's the one thing You know, I get torn with this because I think wholesale replacement of the original metal roof to go to EPDM, it's loss of a historic material and a trace of a historic material. So for me, sort of going over it with EPDM still sort of leaves
Okay.
the building system in place if it can be done to meet warrantyable standards. And,
Yeah.
you know, obviously the roof system's got to be, you know, have a warranty to go with it, and what will they support? And to me, like preserving that underneath a modern system, that's a win for saving a system for somebody else to discover later on, like, aha, it's still here.
Yeah.
If there was one case where I wish you could still put metal back, it's like for like replacement, and this is the spot where, like, we actually have the evidence of metal here right now.
Yeah. The one corner away from the house on the left side is actually, I think you can see here, it's holding water in it because it's low, because the whole thing has kind of sagged.
Yeah.
That's where I'm like hesitant to
They do that,
say,
yeah.
I can definitely keep it because, or not, because I'm not, underneath how much it's sagged, can I push it back up and kind of make it be in the right
I mean, I think
place?
even on your box cutters in your main house, you're gonna have spots that just,
Yeah.
they're, you know, it's an old home, it's not gonna.
On the one side of the house, there's a combination of people put down rubber flat roofing appropriately and like dammed the gutter, and another, and also just it's sagging. So there is a spot where water, like, it's just low.
Yeah.
So I have to fix make it drain properly.
How does the rest of the commission feel on this particular roof? Just because this does have a lot more character to it, metal roof being in place.
It is the type of thing that he's not gonna know until he gets in there. I don't think we wanna tie his hands on it, because he may have to take that whole thing out and do the wood, and ultimately we want this place to function and to wear for another.
100 years.
Yeah.
This does have some pitch though, you know, it's got a little steeper rake on it. And it's probably still not the minimum to get to asphalt, so what is the appropriate replacement line in your mind?
Well, best thing to do would be metal copper. I love it, but that's not reasonable.
Not only metal but copper. I mean, me too, honestly. Like, I mean, copper will like if it's done well, especially mechanically locked seams.
Yeah. Yeah, I've done that.
They'll last forever, but
I've done flat solder, but that's not reasonable.
I mean, you can see the metal joints there, I mean, it's the.
I know. I would tend to say, let him do the EPDM. I mean, at this point, it's impossible to know what's under there. He's got to be up there on the job and get it done. I think your feelings are worthwhile. I think that, if you get up there and everything's good and the metal's solid, I mean, it's easier for you to just put it over the top too.
yeah.
But
You'd
there's
be
always
amazed at
a-
what I would go with lengths I go to not tear stuff out. That, like, say my brother-in-law the other weekend was like, dude, I'll just tear that out. And I was like, no, just clean it up.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'll definitely give it a shot. Like, I'm not like, oh, we're just gonna tear it off and replace it. Like, everything about this house that I've done is like, everything's custom, old house, everything has to be worked around, maybe find the right solution, inside and out. So.
Can I chime in? Not the architecture, right, but with what you're talking about the roof and its historic significance. I know you said the reason to not replace it by metal is its cost. But we have a pretty strict cost parameter. I just want to bring it out there, right? So, I mean, this is not, taking the emotions out of it and all that. This is our charge. So I guess that's something we should be cognizant of. So I'm hearing the goal is to preserve it. If you can't preserve it, replace it like for like.
Right.
If that is just not possible, then it has to be a really good reason. And then I think we need to maybe come back,
Right.
revisit it at that point.
And
Because
that's
you
where,
don't know, we don't know.
that's where I'm convinced on the front roof, we don't have evidence of any metal there being there now or having been there. And so I'm really beyond it on the front roof, and I'm convinced that it can't be seen from the street versus this, I'm not so sure. And this falls in the like for like category where, we do have strict parameters in our code of how we're supposed to rule on cases about like for like material.
From from a detailing standpoint, an argument for what you're talking about too is I think there can be a really clear membrane that you're applying that completes both the box gutter and that flat portion of roof, which in my mind is gonna enable this building to last a long time. You're gonna have a really nice, clear approach. Now, for the front roof, that's great, but I hear what they're saying about potentially seeing what you find there and coming back and maybe potentially talking about the solution. But it does sound like we could move forward with at least that front portion, right? Do we have any more discussion on that, or can we peel that off?
So I want to ask about the commission, what do you feel about the soffits? So staff, one of the reasons we couldn't move this or staff approve the applications because we don't normally approve venting with the soffits. And so our recommendation is to repair the original wood soffit or replace in kind. So we'll get that opinion before we get too far.
I saw that. Yeah, we should talk about that for sure.
I actually do agree that it should be like and in kind. I challenge whether actually venting the soffits is actually the correct solution here. But an architect needs to actually indicate, is that actually the correct solution here? I don't know what the purpose of venting the soffit would be in this case. Because vented soffits are a modern building component for airflow up to a ridge vent or some other system, and you don't have that as a full system here.
Yeah, the slate systems typically breathe on their own. So there's really no reason to add in more
That
venting.
was insulated between the rafters.
Oh, it has been insulated?
Yep.
That,
It was-
a whole other can of worms.
Yeah,
How that
it's,
performs, but I don't know if we're really here to comment on that stuff.
I mean, traditionally these roofs, because they didn't have insulation, venting, they naturally breathed a lot, like a lot. They breathe pretty well. But unfortunately, it doesn't breathe very well. Which is why I'm pretty adamant about venting the soffit in some way. If there's a way to like make it work and not be obvious, like not be, like kind of blend in, I'm all for that.
What would be your proposal for venting the soffit? What is the detail?
That's something that I will probably have to bring back. Yeah.
There are some very modern materials I know that offer like, not pinhole, they're bigger than pinhole. But they're very tight, small patterns, so you just don't see gigantic vents.
Is that a finished space now in the attic? It is, okay. Okay.
Yeah. I would like to be able to start on them and see what's there. But I can also propose something partially because I can propose something for the vents, something specific. But I also don't know what the original, I mean, I have an idea from other homes what the original is like, but I haven't seen exactly what this house has there.
So could we potentially, at least potentially get him moving on the slate portions and the ridges and rebuilding the box gutters with potentially returning on the venting at the soffit? It seems like most people are comfortable with the EPDM on the front porch, seeing generally this is potentially here. And then recommendation of the bump out, if you will, gets EPDM as well? Or is that still the like for like discussion point that we need to have here?
So,
Like, I mean, based on just how it's supposed to follow protocol, right? Like, if the material isn't available or
Correct.
whatever, then it's a different.
And also given the opportunity that you can get in and see what the condition is like.
Do we continue just the bump out component with the soffit venting? Yeah. Would you be comfortable with that? So we can explore.
what exactly are we saying?
We would basically continue just the soffit venting yet, so you can come back with the solution. And then as well as figuring out what you're gonna do for the bump out. Explore that further, gives you a little bit of time on that component, but you could at least get the rest of your main roof going.
Yeah, that works.
Is there a motion?
Try. Okay. Let's see. Right, for application HR 2301-009, 694 Wilson Avenue, I would like to move for approval of the new slate roof replacement as needed. Say when we're approving, correct?
Or everything except for that, might be an easier way. Everything except for the soffit and the.
Okay, approval for everything except for the bump out with metal roof and the venting of the soffits to be continued later with a new proposal and at a later date.
And do we want to call it A, and then we can just do a continuance on the two items with that staff advise that? Yeah, okay, so great, if you want to call it A.
As this being letter A and.
Great. If there's a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Having a motion and a second, any further discussion, any further clarification needed? No. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Okay.
Opposed, abstention, motion passes. And for a motion B for continuance,
All right, and for motion B for HR 2301 009 694 Wilson Avenue to continue exploration of the venting of the soffit and
Metal.
the metal bump out. Sorry.
rebuilding of that in general. Okay, great. There's a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, having a second, any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Opposed, motion passes. Thank you.
Sweet. Sounds good.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to agenda item number 6, HR 23-01-010, 791 Brighton Road. Hey, how are you? If you could raise your right hand. Yep. If you swear to tell the truth in your testimony before the commission this evening.
Yes,
If you could state your full name and association with the property for record.
Chris Bernard, property owner.
Wonderful, thank you.
This application is proposing to replace a deteriorated wood railing with iron railing for the submitted materials. And also to retain painted stone lintels and sills that were painted black, and the work has been completed for that. The applicant notes that the removed railing was 42 inches tall or 44 inches from the plywood subfloor. And the applicant notes that if their preferred choice of wrought iron material is not found to be appropriate, they are open to the option of replacing the previously existing but non-historic wood railing with a new wood railing to match that one. If the applicant's preferred choice of retaining the black paint is not approved, the applicant notes that they can repaint the stone lintels and sills a Benjamin Moore color, Quincy tan. This color was one of the 3 colors approved in 2002 to match the stone color. The specific name of the other 2, which were the Valspar brand colors, unfortunately were not found in the record. So stone lintels and sills were painted black between March and September of 2021 prior to review and approval. The lintels and sills were previously painted and then for a time stone color, which was approved in 2002 to rectify unapproved black paint at that point as well. A COA has been issued regarding the current porch repair work for floors and the porch ceiling. The 2-story porch was altered or replaced in some decades past, and so the current balcony railing is not original. The 1962 and 64 MLS photos show that the historic design of the porch and the balcony railing, so that's how we know that, just for extra confirmation, that the current railing was not historic. So based on the original style of the porch in the Sanborn maps, the porch was added to the home sometime between the 1920s and the 1940s. The porch was likely modified to the 2-story configuration during this era to accommodate the switch from use as a single-family home to use as a multi-tenant flat, which we can see on the Sanborn mapping. So staff recommends that the new railing be simple in style to avoid historicizing or to match the documented historic style that we do have. At the business meeting, the commission noted that it appears the railing has always been wooden material. And the commission asked if the applicant has documentation that a metal railing was present here historically, noting that the commission could consider the new material if so. Otherwise, the commission noted that they do not have the basis to approve the ultimate material or the new railing style. So staff recommendation is to recommend approval of application HR 2301-010-791 Brighton Road with the following stipulations. And that is that the stone lintels and sills be repainted, color matching the natural stone color as closely as possible. And to replace the deteriorated balcony railing with a wood railing that is either simple in style or matching the documented historic design. So the staff recommendation is based on the city code standards for alteration, specifically numbers 2, 3, 5, 6, 9, 10, 11, and 12, as well as the guidelines, including for masonry on pages 28 to 29, and that is all.
Okay, wonderful, thank you. What would the applicant like to add?
Okay, so in my ignorance, I did not realize that black was not an okay color. So, yeah, I did the work. There's houses all around painted, but of course, they're not on the Brighton Road Historical District. I live in Old Town East. Looking around seemed appropriate. I both did not understand that I needed an application for the repair work, and thank you, Jacqueline, for helping me through that. And then the paint, I also didn't understand that I needed an application for that. So it's expensive to repaint it. I would prefer not to repaint it if I can. I am happy next time it needs to be painted to paint it in the proper color. It's just a matter of expense that would make me not want to redo that work, which just happened. The previous paint was in terrible shape, and I would prefer an unpainted stone myself, but like it was easier to paint it than strip all the paint. So if we can talk about that first, and then we can talk about the railing.
I think the issue is if you go back to our section of the code, we have definitions for financial hardship in the code, and simply the paint is expensive won't actually pass.
I agree.
Well,
It's not a financial hardship.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And so we're not saying we're not sensitive to your concern about that.
Yeah.
We just can't rule based on that. So that's, I think, the challenge here. You do have precedent that you did have painted sills. They just sort of need to be the right color, I think, is the scenario. So I guess now you did say you would have preferred to not have painted sills. So, I mean, there are options of repainting the correct color, or, I mean, I don't know if it is possible to remove the paint off the sandstone, but then we're probably talking multiple layers.
That was something, that's why we repainted them, right? It's been touched and messed with and has layers of paint. Yeah, I mean, it was not nice. What you are requiring to be painted is only the stone, if I'm correctly understanding, and not any of the wood in the window frame, correct?
I mean, if you have a need for servicing the window frames at some point, you just have to, that, if those are currently painted around the frame black, I don't think there's any issue with leaving those black. I think the key thing is that the stone should look like
Stone requires, okay.
Yeah.
That stinks, but if that's the way it is, that's the way it is. Okay, moving on. The previous wood railing, as you saw, was a garbage wood railing. There's been a lot of very low quality work done to the house over the years. The entire deck, to my understanding, was replaced about 10 years ago before I purchased the property. I'm guessing that's when they replaced the round beams, that the house originally had, and that you see in the picture from the 60s with the square. I'm not sure how that got passed, but desire is for an iron railing, and I can send this to you in email if you want to bring it up, but I do see a house on 1216 Bryden that is in the historical district, that is a very simple iron railing, similar to the one you see on the bottom there. And that would be the desire. I understand that the more ornate patterns that we were looking for is not acceptable from talking to Jacqueline. The porch is not historic, to the point, the porch itself is from 20s to 40s. What was previously there was hideous and very low quality and falling apart. I'd like to put in something that will last, that will look good, that matches the character of the neighborhood, even if historically that railing, I have no evidence and no reason to believe that that balcony ever had an iron railing. I did run the wood picture from the 60s by a contractor, and he said that wouldn't pass city safety code. So there's no way to replicate the railing from the 60s. So the desire and the request is to be able to put in this sort of historical, and I can send you via email if you want to a picture of the house at 1216 Bryden.
So the issues come into play. So this is history does change, and the house became historic with the adoption of the district, if you will. So we have to take at this point what we're left with when the house came into the district, if you will, and or any knowledge or photos or proof of previous existing conditions. So in this case, what we do have is you didn't have the previous metal railing. Your neighbor may have had a wrought iron railing, so we can't always say just because they do, you get them too. In this, we have to look for what would be appropriate to probably when the porch was added from the 20s to the 40s. And right now you do have a picture that looks like it's got a plausibly architecturally acceptable maybe railing for that area, maybe not, I don't know. I can't really tell.
This one?
No, go to the historic photo.
The one from the 60s.
Yeah.
And
And
the issue is not high enough.
somebody like
It's
colonialized.
not high enough, the bars aren't close enough
Aren't close
together,
enough.
like that would get killed by city.
But what
Right,
I was thinking is could you come up with a railing that uses this as a concept
Mhm.
and then still meets code?
Right, it could be higher, and you could simply move items over to, what is it?
4 inches on
4 inches
center,
down.
make it, yeah.
And, which it would look exactly like that, but it would sort of be reminiscent in that era.
Now, my understanding is I can't do that starburst pattern though, because the starburst pattern has too big of gaps.
Yeah.
So what I could do, and this is easy, is, that railing as I see it is just a very, and you see it all over the neighborhood, is just very simple wood square blocks.
Yeah.
I can do it to code, however many inches apart I need to have, and I can make it taller, And if that's what the commission requires, it's less expensive to do.
And be careful with that too, because the typical kind of suburban railing with the, little 1.5-inch square with the screw on the side and the beveled top, that's not what we're talking about. You've got to have that thicker railing on the top. You have to.
Right, yeah, the house I had in Victoria Village had exactly this railing, so I think I understand what you mean. It's a big thick wood on the top.
On the side.
Then,
Little side
yeah,
panel.
and then these wooden, very square, very like plain.
Right.
Bars, and we'll just go by city code what the 8 bars are. We would not put the starburst pattern in the middle. And, it'll be functional.
We probably could require you to do the starburst. If you wanted to do it though, you could simply add another square or two Yeah, so you'd have 3 squares and the radiating pieces of wood.
To change the pattern to be compliant with city
Yeah,
code,
yeah.
if the gaps are not.
If you wanted to reference that, but that's gone. That's gone. So we're kind of at the point and the columns are gone. So we're sort of at the point of, okay, what's appropriate? What would be typical of the 1920s? You know, other things than that would have been appropriate, but I'm in agreement with, probably needs to be wood.
Right.
Typical wood rail needs to meet current code.
I mean, I would say that probably as an applicant, you probably need to submit a drawing at minimum to staff if it, you know, we can determine whether it can be staff approved for what those railings would then look like. There are standards in our guidelines for railings. In fact, I think there's some samples about how the railing even comes together, right? I know I've seen diagrams from the department on railings.
Here it is.
Yeah, so long as you don't need the starburst pattern, it seems like it should be very easy for us to,
Yeah.
like that, like this is very basic.
Yeah.
It's very simple. It is less expensive. You're covering the cost of repainting it.
And I honestly
Yeah.
think that staff is even recommending we keep this simple to not create false history.
Correct.
Yeah, I'm good at that. And it looks like the lintels were already painted back in the 60s.
Yeah.
I mean, it looks.
And
quite
this
good,
house was
so.
actually almost like they took the Victorian and colonialized it, you know, they painted the sills and the headers white and they.
Yeah, I mean, there are philosophical discussions that could be had about what does it mean to historically preserve a property?
Correct.
Right? And, you know, is it historical preservation to continue the character of it as it was built? Or, you know, like if something terrible happened to it before the historical act went into place, now do we need to maintain that terrible condition? Because that's what it, you know, like I just want to get through and have a functioning board. So it is unfortunate that historical preservation doesn't mean keeping the character of the neighborhood. It means keeping that exact property exactly as it was. But if that's what you guys require, it is cheaper to do a wood railing, and I think that I can work with Jacqueline on that. We've been able to navigate our way through all the rest of it.
So would there, so you would be amenable to repainting the sills and the header?
I mean, I don't want to, but if you tell me I have to, then.
Well, we can only vote on what you would like us to vote on.
Okay.
Um,
Well, I'd like you to vote on leaving the sills as they are, and then if it goes down, I can. Or I get to.
I don't think you're gonna find any
Yeah,
support
that's
for
fine.
that.
Yeah, that's fine.
just-
I understand.
Just to make you feel a little better,
Yeah.
we had another applicant in here who painted an entire 2-story apartment building. He had to remove all the paint.
Yeah.
So
And-
that was a lot more expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I understand that I made a mistake, and that is unfortunate, and that's on me. It's just the stone, it can be repainted, it's not the end of the world. The railing I was more passionate about, but it's fine.
And I think I'd be comfortable with entertaining some sort of motion this evening where you would work with staff to submit a substitute wood railing detail.
Yeah, that's fine.
Sure, the current application is to repaint the,
It's to keep it black.
Okay.
We have to.
okay,
So with
then,
consent from the.
then, I will move to approve the application, provided that the sills, or all the stone that has been painted black are repainted with a staff-approved color, and that a wooden railing be approved, that is approved by staff. So-
Drawings acceptable.
Or drawings acceptable to staff, okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Having a motion and a second, any further discussion? Okay. Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, motion passes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to the next case, case number 7, 1199 Franklin Avenue.
Hello.
Hello. You both want to raise your right hand. Do you each swear to tell the truth in your testimony before the commission this evening?
Yes.
Okay, and if you could each state your full name and association with the property for record.
My name is Tim Bass. I'm with Bass Studio Architects. We represent the owner, Mr. Dean Adamantidis.
Eli Eunice, working on the project, also with Bass City Architects.
Thank you. Jack.
So for this application, this property had previously received approval for replacing all windows, monitor, light rebuild, and general repair in December 2021, as well as rezoning for retail, office, and restaurant use, which was recommended also in December 2021. So here today, the proposal includes exterior alterations. That includes replacing all existing storefront windows or the storefront system in general, removing the existing window at the south elevation and to cut a new entry door to be opened to create ADA access, to install a new mill robust double dark steel cage wall sconce fixtures, replacing existing light fixtures and a new locations for the submitted materials, to install a new LED wall sconce fixtures at the second story level for the submitted materials, to replace 3 existing skylights and install 1 new skylight, to replace the garage doors and the gutters. So staff recommends that simple gooseneck fixtures for the primary elevations to be compatible with the building and to avoid light bleed from the second story fixtures. Now, the historic wood storefront system was previously approved for repair at the December 2021 meeting. So city code and guidelines note that historic materials should be repaired rather than replaced whenever possible, and full-scale replacement is proposed. The commission and staff will need to review detailed existing condition photos to evaluate the condition of the storefront. If the storefront is found to be damaged beyond repair, the new material should match the material being replaced in composition, design, color, texture, and other visual qualities following the city code. And so at the business meeting, the commission, I think, just noted that the application need to come for the discussion. So the recommendation from staff is to recommend approval of application HR 23-0111 at 1199 Franklin Avenue with the following stipulations: that repair of the historic storefront or the historic storefront be repaired, or if this is shown to be beyond repair, to match the historic material in that material and design, and to use simple fixtures and avoid light bleed for the primary elevation. And the basis for the staff recommendation is the city code standards for alteration, specifically numbers 1, 2, 6, and 12.
Great. Thank you. What else would you like to add?
We have no problem with the simpler light fixtures. We submitted several to look at. I'm not sure, and we're happy to talk about which ones. And I was having a little trouble hearing mostly because of my ears. But are you saying that you'd like to see the wall packs on the higher level go away? Is that where we are with those? There were several.
So there's, I think, 2 different fixtures, at least initially proposed for the primary elevation. And they also include the fixtures at the second story level of the building that are shining kind of like down.
Right. We had, there were 2 instances, 2 types or 2 reasons. One of them was the alley facades where we have arrival at night. We thought it might be safer with those fixtures to illuminate the area. There are street lights in the area. If those are objectionable, we can let them go. Honestly, the LEDs. So.
And these are they shielded?
They're shielded. So.
You know, for being familiar with this neighborhood, this location, this building, the alleyway on the side and on the back here is sort of dark. The building has been subject to graffiti and other things because you don't get the lighting here. So if the goosenecks are on the front, on the most primary thing or the decorative feature, I do understand the addition of the LED shielded lights, and I think that
And-
this could be a condition of why we even consider that. Or
We
making that
wouldn't put them
worthwhile.
on this side, they would be the back alley
That'd be
right
the
there,
back.
right?
Yeah,
And-
which I think, I mean, I actually really understand that that might be a modern addition that's needed for health, welfare, life, safety.
And then the simpler light, we have, the goosenecks, we have a couple different kind of goosenecks. We have one with just the RLM, the spun shade. And we have one with a smaller shade and a, security jar look to the caged light look. This is the original proposal and, I don't know if, we were just having a conversation, Jackie, or if you were suggesting that that wasn't simple enough, but we found a single fixture. And what's up there now is just two spots at each location. We actually have them spotted where there are already lights, and they're really bad spotlights right now. So we thought this would be a more industrial, maybe more appropriate look, but we're happy to.
Where are those located? So
these-
what I worry about is like the false sense of industrial historicity, if that is such a thing. But
Sure,
like, you know, some of these fixtures, when you look at them, can add a false sense of being what they should be. And,
Sure,
you know, the gooseneck is sort of a simple person, but yeah, can you show us where?
sure. So these are located on the east side. They're the large warehouse windows, and there's one there. Skipped one. Is that right? They're not quick. They're almost on every pilaster, but they're not. So there's one there, and there. And like I said, right now they're double fixtures, but it's not what we want to die on. If we have a 14-inch RLM, which is a fairly simple, and ubiquitous fixture. What we don't want to do is have a long stem on it, so we would get it as close to the building as we could. We also have a smaller fixture. I don't know if it's in your package. It's a gooseneck, but it's a smaller scale. It's 11 or 12 inches, and it has the light has the cage on it, like a safety cage. That's the double fixture. That's the RLM. That's the standard. That's a long. I wouldn't want to do that long. If we do these, we would do a shorter. Yeah, and I think it's on down through that one. Yeah, so that's not quite as steampunk as the one.
Yeah, that's what I'm afraid of, is this, that's exactly, you just said it, you know, that's key. You're putting kind of this modern and faux industrial intrusion on it.
Yeah. So this one is pretty simple. I think there was a picture of it too. But like I said, this building will carry itself. The light fixture, we're not overly concerned with, other than, you know, you like it, we like it. So we could do a regular RLM with it's gonna be a lamp in it anyway, so this is just a protected lamp.
How did the rest of the design folks feel about this, or? What
Yeah, I mean, this one's better than.
Yeah.
The other ones.
Yeah, well, the shade on the lamp that's being shown, is it going to be closer to the one that we're seeing on the bottom left or top?
This
top.
We actually prefer the smaller one.
On the right.
Yeah,
Right.
and fortunately, I think that's better with the lighting. So.
Okay.
And just, not that this impacts us because they're separate bodies and jurisdictions and reviews, is, are you in SHPO for anything, or historic tax credits or anything? And do you have to go through any secondary approval bodies for these?
We actually have received approval for state and federal with SHPO.
Okay.
But we haven't run this through it yet.
Okay,
So
so this might change as you even get feedback from them.
if it did, we'd come back.
Gotcha.
So,
Okay.
yeah, we, sorry that this has
I
been
always
so.
like to ask it just to know where you are in your process too, because.
Okay, I was just gonna-
It actually helps us.
Yeah, so that's what I was just gonna say. I'm sorry this was so incremental, but we actually went and received, I think it's federal first, we worked with SHPO, but we got our federal approval. And then the whole program of the building changed. So we had to go back and we prepared a revision for federal and a new submittal for the state. And so that happened, and then we have been really just sort of lurching around with the client and the user. And now we're ready to start construction or get a permit. And so we realized that we had a not quite complete a COA. So we didn't want to, there's a COA on record, but we didn't want to go in and not cover these things. So
So we got the light fixtures. That seems to be one item addressed. I think that,
Well, there was a second story light fixtures, the same.
no, the second story, the wall, those are the wall washers, those little square boxes.
yeah, there's a picture, is it down on the left-hand side there, right there?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty,
And those, did you find those on the market, Eli, over at the East Market? Is that where you?
Similar to it,
Something
yeah.
like that. So Eli was looking around at what we thought would be.
and again, those are just on the alleyway, right?
Right. Well, we have them shown, I'll stipulate, if we look at the elevation, we have them shown currently. This is the rear of the south alley. This is the west alley, and we actually have them on the front of the building as well, but happy to let them go. So, we had a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 up high on the front, just to give it some presence, but it's not that important to us. Like I said, the building's gonna be so impactful that the lighting.
I'm more concerned when they're on the front of a building because when they're up and visual, it's not architectural illumination. It's gonna be, I think, sort of, we've had other applicants come forward and propose illuminating fronts of buildings, and then it becomes this added thing on the building that doesn't fit. I can be convinced on where it's alleyways for safety purposes, but maybe less so on primary facades such as this. I don't know how others feel, but
I agree.
Eli had pointed out to me that we also have the goosenecks over that door and that door. So there would be 2 more than we saw here. So 2 on the front.
I think the goosenecks make sense, at least from a.
Also giving us safety and
Yeah.
approach to entry. Would be appropriate.
So that kind of rounds out light fixture discussion, but storefront system and replacement of storefronts, what is driving the need for wholesale replacement of storefront?
So interestingly enough, and I'm embarrassed to say this, when we did the SHPO work, and the state historic preservation officer that was working on our matter was there as well. We all walked through and we said, oh, old storefronts. And we just sort of said, we'll repair them because they look, we didn't want to find a unit and put it in there, but in fact, they're aluminum. It's sort of a hybrid hodgepodge. There's wood and aluminum in there. If we can get, if you blow up on this
Zoom in
picture.
on those couple pictures. right?
So they're not original. They have wood out here, but inside these are aluminum pieces that are just sort of stick framed into the old piece. And so they're not original. The bottoms are starting to compress, and we looked at, if it was wood and it was the old one, we said, go ahead and rebuild it or fix it. But what we say is, let's build the base to look like this, and we'll put windows in to match the large windows above. This as well. This is an original we were looking through. You can see here, that's just aluminum. That doesn't even have the pretend wood on it. These are aluminum, and these are sagging, and these spandrels have failed, and they've just formed water into the walls and the storefronts for so long that they're not really still intact, or they're not structurally intact. So you're looking at aluminum there. You're looking at aluminum here. This is a 3-panel door that wasn't original. It's not in any of the original pictures. So these are being replaced with a nice large custom window system, and we thought we'd just use picture units that approximate this. And the drawings are included in the window set. They were reviewed by SHPO when we submitted the windows, but we just carved that out because I think they were afraid to say, replace the storefront wholesale. But the more we look, I'm embarrassed to say that we were a year in before we realized that wasn't all wood. So it's a hybrid hodgepodge of storefront out there. So that's why to replace.
Does that change staff's recommendation?
Slightly, I still have the in-like kind aspect of it.
Pardon me? That, like,
The in-like kind. So historically, this would have been wood. If you're saying, you know, the storefront system's no longer historic and all that. Our guidance and code stipulate that the replacement should be to match the historic material that we know that it was.
And
We haven't
we
detailed,
do
right?
not, do we have any pictures of what this storefront opening was?
We have some older photos.
it kind of looked like this. It kind of looked like this. I think that it's in the original openings, and these appear to be original. Everything up on top appears to be original, but everything down here is somewhat compromised.
So then go to the replacement
Pardon me?
proposal. If you could flip to the drawing of the replacement proposal. So this is what we're looking at, just replacing it with is a similar pattern mullion and a similar pattern base and.
Right. We have it detailed. We can build it in wood, but it won't match the windows above. So we thought it might be a nice idea to have all the lights line or be more alike than a different wood storefront. But again, we have details. We can build it in wood if that's preferred. We can rebuild the storefront. We know that it's those proportions. There was a funny, we went back through some old pictures, and the difference in the modulation on the right was different than the left, and I think you see that in the existing pictures. We don't know when that happened, but it was there a long time ago. But you can see that actually it's gonna be the front. There's a shot of the front. Yeah, so that was, so you can see over here. This one has two large windows, and then the one on the other side of the front door has four. And I don't know when it happened, but the one with two large windows is failing. So the little header over that window isn't substantial enough to carry that span. So that's why we went with we matched the articulation on the right side of the door on the left, is all I'm saying. And that's why. Somewhere in the past, that changed from 4 to 2. But we can do wood. I mean, again, we're not.
So right now, what's in your drawings though on the window schedule, I think is you propose material to be wood, custom milled unit by window.
That's what's in the drawings now.
And that's what you'd like to continue with as an applicant. I mean, that's our.
We're fine with that. We submitted, I think, in the application, did we say we were replacing them with windows?
The bottom ones?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think in the application, we asked to just use the window units. If we want to do the wood, we're fine.
I would tend to think that the smaller units is where it's been replaced with aluminum, correct?
No, it's actually the larger ones.
But you said that this was aluminum.
I think there's aluminum on the inside of these, and then when you look at the larger ones, it's just aluminum.
I'm gonna strip, yeah.
Yeah,
I get that, but this is wood or aluminum?
it's both. It's wood outside, and I think the glazing inside is actually aluminum.
Okay, so these are aluminum, and you can't tell from the glass itself.
Can't tell.
It's all new glass.
You know, this might be wood, that might be aluminum.
Yeah.
It's just a funny mix of pieces out there.
Because I would tend to, what's the distance between here?
That is about 5 feet. 4 feet, 5 feet.
Between here and,
Oh, the whole thing
yeah,
is, maybe 8 feet, 9 feet,
and the building dates from
1905.
that may have been one piece of glass, but
Yeah, I don't know.
It was a car dealership, right?
it was a car dealership because they were big into getting as large a piece of glass as they could get in. So it
Yeah.
always had to be
Yes. Right,
four
you had big
windows on
windows for a
top
reason. Yeah.
there. This one, because that's probably too far. I would feel that this is almost more 60s where it was sort of like, let's make it look a little bit more colonial, match the windows on top and divide it up more.
Yeah, the life of this building when it was, a lot of its car uses was, let's show off the merchandise inside and the big windows.
Yeah, yeah. So I would tend, although if we don't have photographs, we don't really improve. If we don't have,
Yeah,
although as you're carrying things out, you can see a lot of times what was there, but we're not at that point, I guess. So
You know what, so generally I do support like for like on wood window replacements. One of my challenges is that we have reapproved or, I've served on this commission since we revisited our window list because we were seeing evidence of new windows or replacement windows that were made of wood. All of a sudden, a couple of years later, the applicant came back in and their new wood windows failed just because of the inability of new modern wood windows to live up to the same lifespan of old wood windows, that just the new growth lumber doesn't hold up. And so I think I'm more concerned about the context of mullions and replicating proportions and dividing the lights correctly. And I worry with these size of storefronts, if the applicant goes through the effort of complete wood window replacement, are we going to see them in 2 or 3 years with the system completely failed again? It is a challenge with wood windows right now. And these are basically gigantic wood
Yeah.
windows.
Right.
So I just want to throw that out there as a point of discussion where we do vary from things. This may be an appropriate scenario to vary from.
particularly if we're looking at this as a window replacement.
Right.
As opposed to a facade change. I
Right.
mean, the windows on the second floor, it's being allowed, the other windows,
Right.
these windows is because they're larger, where's that fine line? Like,
Well,
there's a little-
and that's the thing is I could picture, the applicant rebuilding the base portion, the bottom, say 12 inches or whatever that base is with the panel front that's in the pictures. That can have a combination of materials where the panel maybe fails on the outside, but the integrity of the wall doesn't fail. Versus the large storefront windows, the integrity of the window fails, then you have a moisture problem. So-
Almost like an implied wood panel up front,
Correct.
which would certainly recreate the feel of the building and the look, but it wouldn't fail in 8 years.
So
Yeah.
I guess my question is would the applicant want additional time to think about the storefront windows and how because right now you're proposing wood replacement.
What we could do, what we'd like to do is get we have so much shell work to do. We'd like to get the permit set in. So we could carve this out and we can work with Jackie. I have a picture here from 1914. The window may be the whole bay, so I don't quite know.
Okay. So the windows are larger.
Oh, maybe. I don't know how they held it up.
Where's the photo? Can you
It's
send it?
from a Horseless Age magazine and.
If you don't mind just approaching and doing a show and tell down the line. We're all curious, we're very interested.
So, I'm happy, we're happy to do it. I mean, we want to do the right thing, so we can, but if we could,
Yeah.
because we need a COA to go forward, if we could,
I kind of figured.
if we could say, we carve that out, we'll build it in wood, we just have to agree
Right.
what we're building. So,
Oh, yeah. Those are huge, big single.
I couldn't do that. I can't do that.
Yeah, the 1914 design, I think, looks a lot better.
Yeah. It does look great. I don't know how we do it. We can't get a window that big today. It drives me crazy. The 1950s, they had, quarter-inch plate glass and half-inch metal frames, and we can't do that today.
Right.
And they also bent it.
Was altered, it might have acquired significance by this point anyway.
Pardon me?
Depending on when the storefront or the windows have been altered, it might have acquired significance at this point anyway. We would require you to go back to 1914.
But the applicant could propose going back to 1914, correct?
If, I just want to make sure that whatever configuration now is not historic. You know,
Right.
it's just representing the changes over time.
But-
I don't think that's the plan anyway, right?
But he had said those were aluminum. I mean, they're aluminum with some included piece of wood on the front of the aluminum.
There's,
Storefront.
yeah, it's a real hodgepodge in there. We could stick with right, if you go back a few years, or as far as before you get to this 1914, it's the 2-in-1. And I can't tell if we're not seeing a piece of aluminum in this picture because it's dark, but I can't get a window that big. So maybe we do the 2 the way they are now, and we leave the 4 the way they are, and we do it in wood, and we move on.
So I guess the other items too up for discussion here would be, we've talked about the fixtures, we talked about the storefront. Let's talk about the replacement of the existing skylights.
Yes,
You're replacing 3 existing skylights and install 1 new skylight.
right. So you'll never see the new one. It's on the corner, it's on the southwest quadrant of the roof. So if you got as far away as you could in the alley, I don't think you'll ever see it. If you went left in that alley, you'll just never see it. But there is an existing one. If you go out to Franklin and go to the west of the building, you can see with the character of them. It's up on if you back up another 50 feet, see that, you gotta go farther. You barely see them, so they're hard to see.
Maybe
There it
just
is.
stuff
Right
there.
So there are 3 of those now, and 1 in each quadrant of that roof. And we just put the 4th in to even out the space. And that's an aluminum skylight on a curb. And it's framed around inside in wood, and that's basically what we're proposing.
And then replace garage doors. I think I understand you've got probably wood garage doors here beyond their useful life.
Right.
And replacing gutters. Where are the gutters you're replacing?
The gutters are just gonna be replaced in kind. If you go to the back, they're just downspouts. Downspouts and gutters. These are,
Got it.
you can see daylight through it when it's coming off. And so we have 1 or 2 downspouts that we would do. Those are half rounds for the replacement. Downspout. There might be another one. And there's one on the northwest corner of the building. We just, as we put the roof on, we're gonna replace those in kind.
So would there potentially be ability for the commission to potentially, approve everything except for maybe potentially continuing the storefronts? As discussed with the applicant, and then maybe approval with the light fixtures being substituted as discussed here this evening.
Yep.
About
On the storefront, if we're asking for a continuation on that, what is it that potentially want to see in addition?
I think it's drawings that reflect what the applicant would like to do. Just if it's not continuing with a fully wood system and it's introducing aluminum and other components to ensure weather-tight window application because of the fact these are just large windows, and or even exploring going back to a 1914 condition and making sure that's all copacetic. I just think we need drawings, right?
And how the wood panel
Right.
would work underneath or
Correct.
how that's
Or
gonna
not,
be
yeah.
handled, or probably a section through that, so you get some idea of the depth.
I think we have them in our drawings.
Not the most recent.
Not the most recent. We can get back, we can, I don't know if you, if we were to say that we'll go back to, on the east side of the front door, we go back to the, modules that are there now, and on the west side of the front door, we go back to, so if you look at this elevation, the, everything to the right of the front door is what's there now. This, and this side just has, one in the center, and not the twos. And we have that detailed wood, and we could submit it for staff approval. And, the base is all detailed as well, so, I'm happy to submit that, and we could leave that, we can continue it, but we can, if you want to leave it for staff, or we'll come back and show it to you.
We could approve on the basis of wood as is in the staff recommendation and in the drawings, and then if you decide to change any alteration, you just come in for that.
Sounds good.
Okay. You want to give it a go? No, good. There you go. So script for you.
Okay, regarding HR 23-01-011, move to approve the application as submitted with a recommendation for staff approval on all storefront window details.
The light fixture.
Oh, and with the update on the light fixtures, the AKA steampunk
What was that?
fixture being removed, and the downlights on the front facade also being removed.
What was the first one we removed? Oh, the steampunk?
Yes.
So we would, do
Remove
we
and
want to name
replace.
this one as the,
And substitute the saucer vapor jar.
So there's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Having a motion and a second, is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Opposed, abstention, motion passes.
thank you.
Let's work with staff if anything changes further. Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to 24 East North Avenue. Hi, everyone. Good evening, sir. If you could raise your right hand.
Sure.
You swear to tell the truth in your testimony before the commission this evening.
Yes,
If you could state your full name and association with the property for record.
Bruce Quack, I'm managing the renovation.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Jacqueline.
Okay, for this application, this is proposing to retain the storage unit that is currently on the property. So the storage unit was added to the property facing the alley between East Northwood Avenue and East Oakland Avenue around 2020. So the zoning code does note that the portable storage container is not permitted as a permanent accessory storage structure, regardless of the proposed location of the unit on a parcel. So we're not able to support retaining the storage unit because of the zoning code. So at the January 5th business meeting, the commission noted that the storage unit is inappropriate, would not be able to approve, and that the applicant is welcome to attend. So for the proposal to retain the shipping container, but again, noted it's unlikely to be approved. So the staff recommendation is to remove the storage unit or recommend denial for application HR 23-01-012 as currently proposed. The basis for the staff recommendation is the city code standards for site improvements, specifically letter A, as well as the zoning code 3390.02 for no temporary use permit required. And that states that the portable storage container may be located on a parcel for 2 non-sequential periods, not exceeding 14 days for each period per calendar year. The portable storage container shall be situated on an improved surface when possible and not block any sidewalk or shared use path. A portable storage container is not permitted as a permanent accessory storage structure, regardless of the proposed location of the unit on a parcel.
Okay. Would the applicant like to add it?
We're using it to store materials for the renovation and what was in the garage and, I didn't, when I signed up for it, I had no idea that it was an issue and neither does the purveyor of that storage unit. I've gone back and forth with him on that. So I guess kind of my question, is it more of a historic, situation or is it, like a citywide situation?
It's both, I mean, citywide, it's not permitted as well, but then historic, we consider it compatible, but we.
And I mean, we're not intending it. It's, you said something like, you called it what, an accessory structure? Or
It's-
whatever you call it, we're not, I mean, I don't plan on keeping it forever.
How long do you plan keeping it?
It'd be nice to have another 9 months so we can finish up the, the renovation. It just makes things a little more convenient.
And the code allows how long? 14 days?
14 days, right?
And how long has it been up already?
I believe, was it,
It's been over a year. Yeah. Again, until, when did someone report it or when did that happen? I don't really know.
I think it might have been reported, August 2nd, and I think it does appear in Google Street Views earlier than that.
Yeah, but we've had it a while.
So I guess my question is, what would the applicant like us to do? Would you like us to render a vote on this, then retaining it?
It's full, okay, so, it's.
We could approve 14 days. That would allow 2 weeks.
Oh, man, that would kill me. I would definitely be running over that. I've got a washer and dryer that, I manage college student rentals, so I just had a washer and dryer go out, so.
The spot.
I don't know what I'm.
Specific on it, we're not able to go against the zoning code.
Sure.
But 14 days would be better than tomorrow morning at 8:01.
Sure, yeah,
Which is
clearly.
kind of the only, if it says 14 days, that's the most we can do. That'd be the max.
I guess I don't, is it even in our purview to
Yes.
grant temporary approval?
Don't think so.
I don't believe so either.
But, yeah,
And while any motion is always made in the positive, I just don't know if I can get there on this.
Yeah, I guess the case in front of us is to approve this thing and
Right.
not the zoning, right?
Right.
I don't know, yeah, how would we,
The application was made, so I guess we need to vote.
do we table it if you want to work with city department, because I guess.
No, I think we need to vote because well, I would prefer to vote because I know, I don't see any evidence that can sway me at this point.
Yeah.
I don't need more information to vote. So for me, I don't see any reason to delay, but.
So I guess we would vote saying that we don't want this as a permanent thing. Now whether you
No,
keep it for,
you always vote in the affirmative.
right, so we
Sorry,
would
vote-
deny, so we would deny, so we would deny,
A motion has always been in the affirmative. How
so
you-
we would deny it. But,
However-
I guess if you want to keep it for a few more days, that's a different process than this group is what I'm saying, right? That's not us.
He's already in violation.
Yeah, but that's not our.
So what's in our purview, I guess?
Right now, the request is to retain it permanently.
Yes.
Oh, that's
That's
an
what-
obvious challenge.
Yeah, that's a no. That's all we voted.
Right. At least for me, I don't want to speak for everyone else.
Yeah,
It's
no,
no for me.
Agreed, yeah. Okay, so do we vote? Do we make a motion?
Anybody can make a motion.
Okay. So, motion for HR 2301-012, 24 Northwood Avenue. I move to approve as submitted.
Okay, there's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
So motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Opposed?
Aye or nay?
Aye or nay?
Nay.
Nay.
Abstention? Motion was not passed unanimously. And then it looks like we also have then, there is also then a case HR 2301-013.
Before we move on to that one, I think we do have to cite the code for denial.
Okay.
So it's the commission citing like the standards for site improvements, and the code that was in the staff report. Is there any additional?
No, I think it's consistently with this, with the staff report. I think textually, we did, it just doesn't fit.
Okay, so also at this property, there's another application. This one involves landscaping and an exterior alteration. So that'd be the modification of landscaping with new hardscape and removal of the retaining wall, which has been completed, and the installation of venting through the soffits, which has also been completed. So the property received a code violation August this past August regarding the change of the front yard area to hardscape, removal of a retaining wall, and modification of the roof soffit with venting extruding from the soffit. So the Northwood Park Historic District was nominated in 1989 as an important component of the historical and architectural fabric of Columbus and the University District. So the district was nominated under A&D as a superb example of early 1900s middle-class streetcar suburb. And that nomination notes high-quality brickwork, roof detailing, gardens, large trees, and large porches are noticeable and outstanding characteristics of Northwood Park. The nomination further describes the character of the historic neighborhood, describing these beautiful tree-lined streets that they noted for their well-maintained homes and gardens. So as described in the Columbus Register of Historic Properties nomination, sloped lawns and tree-lined streets are character-defining features of the historic Northwood Park District and part of the original design and context of the neighborhood. Guidelines note that where historic landscaping features exist, to preserve and maintain those features. So city code notes that landscaping, parking, utility, or service areas, walkways, and similar improvements should be compatible to each other and to the subject building or structure, as well as to adjacent contributing properties, open spaces, and the overall environment. So staff recommends venting take place through the roof in lieu of soffit vents or half vents, and to be compatible with the home design. So at the January 5th business meeting, the commission noted that the removal of the side concrete block retaining wall is appropriate, and noting that it's clear that the concrete block retaining wall was not part of the historic fabric, it was installed with the parking lot. Note that this area where the concrete retaining wall was formerly located should be regraded and planted. The commission noted that the stone and gravel in the front yard is not appropriate. The commission requested the measured and to scale landscape plan, and noted that graph paper is acceptable. Landscape elevation or plan would be acceptable, but a plan is preferred for clarity. The commission notes that the exhaust vents can be vented through the roof and want to understand what the final appearance is for how that is proposed to appear, noting that they will need to abide by the building codes. So staff recommends continuing application HR 2301-013 24 East Northwood Avenue to allow the applicant time to revise the application to meet city code and the Columbus Register of Historic Property Architectural Guidelines. The basis for the staff recommendation are the city code standards for site improvements, specifically letter A, as well as the city code standards for alteration, specifically numbers 1, 6, 11, and 12, as well as the guidelines for historic plants and landscaping on page 83, and roofing materials on page 44.
Great, thank you. I know we spent time during the business meeting kind of going over this one because there was a lot of little things. And I have questions as well for the applicant too to help kind of clarify it. If you could go to page number 29. And to help kind of, there's this multi pieces here, so I kind of want to chip away at this at different levels. I think there was some discussion at the business meeting that potentially, you're intending to leave these walls, this wall, and this is the wall that has been removed, and you would be disposing of that debris, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. and I can't speak for everybody here, but I think we generally said that that wall wasn't historically, significant and wasn't there when this thing had a graded lawn further out into this parking zone. And as long as the debris was removed and that piece was resloped, that wall removal was probably in keeping with returning this district back to more historic things. Is there agreement here?
Yeah, what kind of wall was that was moved?
It was just blocks. What we'd like to do is do something sort of like the rubble stone or some sort of natural stone
I've heard.
wall there.
What we do have in this district is sloped lawns or just lawns, and I think where we were going with discussion when we looked at this application initially is your simplest solution is just fill topsoil in and plant and seed that down. And just don't do any walls. We generally don't see new walls. If it's a like for like replacement, that's a little bit of start to be a different discussion based on when the wall was
In
added.
that case, we need to see drawings and materials
Correct.
and stuff.
But there was never an application made for like before the wall was removed, therefore it's
Correct.
no longer an existing
Correct.
wall to make that a case.
Right.
So at this point, it should be a sloped lawn. back to-
Really, the simplest thing is to probably ask you, is there any consideration you would give to just putting the lawn and tapering it right down?
I mean, it's a pretty steep slope if you, want people to walk across it. That's why when the wall was there, people were sort of forced to go down those couple of steps rather than where they'll just generally walk across some kind of sloped area. So that was our thought, on, the sloped, maybe we can table that and you can talk about some of the other things that are here.
The next thing would be the venting, if you can zoom in on the top, just zoom in on the top of the photo, was the venting of these two hoods out the side. Is that compliant with code at this point? Even if,
Yeah, we have an active building permit on this property.
okay,
What are those vents?
One is a second floor laundry and the other is a second floor bathroom bath fan.
is there any way you can take that and actually sort of put it on the soffit itself? Can it not be vertical and be actually installed on the soffit?
We came up with that design just thinking that, we're gonna get the moisture to leave the building rather than build up underneath that soffit area there. That's why we were taking a mechanical approach rather than what's a historic preservation.
Right now, that's the issue is what we're.
The way those look.
Today, I think we're gonna have a challenge here getting that approved.
Mhm.
And I think the only thing we could think of in our minds potentially would be is if you say, okay, a building has to live and have a new life, is you just have to go through the roof and you vent it out the roof.
Mhm. But you're saying you would be okay if it wasn't like this and it was like this?
Well, that's what I was wondering is can it be installed just on the underside on a soffit? I'm not a
I think we
mechanical
could.
engineer. I can't answer that question.
It would fall within, with the building code as far as venting goes, you have so many different, I'm not telling you guys, some people know. So I think that would probably be just fine because now you're removing a 90. So it's gonna vent even better.
Even better. If,
Or it still falls within the guidelines of venting.
so what I would actually probably ask is, would you be okay if we tabled this so that you could just verify that you could achieve that and not violate a building permit issue or building code issue? Just
Sure, sure.
We're not experts on that.
Mhm.
We're concerned about looks, aesthetics and historical applications.
Right,
We just don't want to create more problems for you. Approve it.
right. No, well, that would fall under the HVAC inspection.
Yeah.
And I can talk to
Okay.
John about that.
Okay, because you've asked us to table the wall, we can table that, we
Mhm.
can table this piece. now we're basically moving to the front of the property. And I think what we've got there, correct me if I'm wrong, we understand there was a lot of bigger growth here. You guys removed that bigger growth, the bigger bushes, those kinds of things.
Well, let's go back. I mean, it was, you know, it hadn't been maintained, those old school, I don't know where you grew up, but in the old school neighborhoods, how those pine bushes just like, they just keep growing and at some point they're just
Beyond their useful.
beyond, like if you trim them back, you're just gonna have stalks.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's where it was. And I think there's even a picture on that.
Yeah, page 9, I think.
Yeah. And the problem here is this is on campus, this is on Northwood, and everybody that goes to the football game stuffs their 3/4 drunk beer can in all the vegetation that's across the front of that brick wall right there. Because they're all coming,
Yeah, I mean,
let's see, where are you?
there's the overgrown house, right?
Correct, yeah, that was the before. So and everybody, you know, they park on Northwood, they park up by the church, on Indianola and Maynard, and they walk down here, and this was the final resting place of all their trash, if you can see what I mean. And we just kind of got tired of it.
So I think the one thing we would probably need to at least see is replacement plantings, even if they're new and they're smaller, and eventually, yes, in 20 years, they're gonna grow to bigger heights. I think we need to have consideration for at least some replacement plantings happening.
Something of similar size. I know you mentioned boxwood, and it seems like from the images, there are a few of these daylilies already planted, but even in the drawings, it does not represent at least what the mature size of those plants would be in relationship to the maximum coverage of that front area.
If you could go up one photo, you'll see we've got some
Right, correct.
boxwoods planted in the keep going. I think it's the next photo down. There.
Yeah, so yes, they will eventually grow in, but for record, in having that drawing as representation of this is what we expect that size to be, right? Even though we know there will be some continuing maintenance over time to keep this.
These photos don't show those plantings.
It must have been in the earlier one. There's an
The
earlier-
boxwood that you planted is right next to the house,
Oh.
correct?
That one's next to the house.
That's by the patio or the
Right,
front
it's right next to
porch.
the house.
Right.
The
But then
issue-
whatever that plant is, I'm not a plant guy.
Right. The issue is where you put all the big stones.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Not
think
that's
the real hard.
That's the issue right there.
And
And we don't see any plantings in that. What I see is large rock and some river stone and,
and if the argument is.
it doesn't look like the historical area as described as maintained gardens, trees and bushes.
And there was two arguments, if I can note. So the first being the trash that's being collected. I don't necessarily think this stops anyone from coming by and just on their way dropping something off. I think they're going to have to expect some cleanup to take place. Then the other in the owner's letter about kind of helping with climate change and keeping this kind of hardscape that's kind of the opposite at this point. So we want to make sure we add plants to help with drainage, help cool down the space in the front yard. And so that will benefit the house overall. So those, I think, would just be my suggestions.
Do you guys have like a list of approved plants or something that we?
Well, I don't necessarily think that what you have posed is bad. Boxwood's acceptable. Daylilies are acceptable. Phlox is acceptable. It's the adding that to a drawing, showing this exactly placement of those plants, and then kind of reading and researching like what's the expected sizing of those plants in relationship, so we can see what the ratio is between the leftover hardscape and what the plants will actually cover. once they grow.
And I think I want to just stress one thing, which I heard Clyde initially mention. I think all of us have concern about approving these very big limestone rocks that feel like they're just kind of, I mean, I get that they're big stripes, but those just don't seem appropriate for this landscape.
There's no precedent.
There's a
for it.
lot of it too. There's a
Mhm.
lot.
Right, it's not like we don't want it or we don't like it, it wasn't there on site before.
I mean, unless you can come up with some photographs from, when was this house built, 1910-ish maybe? From 1910, that was typical and normal for that house, and that they were there. You know, but I don't see any evidence that they were there. I would suspect, in fact, that that retaining wall wasn't there. And that the lawn was sloped.
I was even thinking like, I might be able to buy the argument of instead of a mulch or a grass, having some of your river stone, because you have this cobblestone sort of sidewall, and maybe, you know, I could buy some to attempt to tie it through. But, you know, maybe some of the simple solutions might be to revise the landscape drawing, where if you're taking out all that big rock stuff, and maybe there's just rows of plants in place of where all that big rock stuff is. Maybe that's an easier solution, you know, and it could be just a, you know, a row of phlox or something that's an easy,
Cover it,
the
yeah.
phlox eventually grow and they'll take over that whole
Yep.
hillside.
Yeah, yeah. The
It's not an expensive solution either.
smaller stones, I can see is almost kind of like a mulch.
Yeah.
And particularly if there's something that's gonna grow over them and soften them up around the edges of them. It would prevent dirt wash away, soil wash away. So, yeah, you can do that a number of ways. If you want to do bushes that spread out over the top, you can do that. You can do some of the, there's a number of evergreens that grow low to the ground, that require almost no maintenance. I'm trying to think it's King something or other island, but, or phlox, beautiful solution.
I mean, the phlox are proposed in here, and I thought just put whole rows of them in there, and they're cheap, and they'll just take over it.
They bloom in the spring and then.
You're talking about the purple stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's,
they remain green the rest of the year.
Yeah.
They're real low maintenance.
They start this big and then they.
yeah, we're trying to get it to take off. Especially our hope was to, right there was that it would start kind of creeping over the brick wall.
Yeah, and the phlox will definitely do that. If you can also, myrtle, that's another good choice, and then lily turf as well. So all of those.
You'll have to repeat, I'm not a plant guy, so.
Yeah.
Phlox, I got that one.
Lily turf and myrtle.
You can tell.
I'm sure you were talking about some sort of king something.
Yeah.
Like,
I think their suggestions are probably better. If you wanted it all to be green, you could do pachysandra, but it probably would, but you really don't want to blend that in with the phlox, I don't think. Or if you want to do it really simple, you could just go with ivy, but.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
There's a lot of precedent in these neighborhoods for ivy.
But the ivy just grows everywhere and it doesn't maintain maintenance, and
You gotta weed it, you gotta pull on
it can get really out of control, whereas I think the phlox tend to grow a tighter weed.
Right.
And require
a lot less.
a lot less, got just fertilizer on it.
So, good. So we continue this?
So,
But
I think
but I
it's
think
a
the
whole
big
lot.
rocks have to go.
I don't think I really think they have any real fit, all the big rocks, and, you know, I think I would just defer to the applicant to propose what they'd like to do. And let them come back and just, you know, they've asked us to continue the wall piece, that's where the walls are moved. Give them time to sort out the solution for the soffit and the vent there, maybe there's something simple, we hope. And then let them come back with, you know, based on the feedback they've received tonight, just continue this.
so I just want to see if I caught something. that was thrown here, you would consider approving sort of rows of bushes where the big rocks are.
I mean, I can't speak for everybody here, but my suggestion
Yeah,
is like,
right, I know.
you literally could do a row of phlox, place of each of those big striped rows of
Taking out the big rocks,
big
Yeah.
rocks, yeah.
replacing with rose plots.
Yeah,
Okay.
and that would initially would give you kind of a stripe pattern
Yeah.
of the flocks, but eventually those flocks will spread out
Eventually take over the whole hill there.
and they'll take over the hill and they'll grow down the wall a little bit. You get a really nice soft edge. Well, it'll sort of help with your garbage too, because if people do throw beer cans on, it's gonna land on top of it. You're not gonna get it down under
Correct, right,
because
Very-
that stuff is just woven together and so they'll be easy to pick out. I mean, no matter what those rocks aren't gonna prevent somebody from throwing a beer can on there either.
Right. It was more the cleanup, but yeah. So if what we're seeing right there, if you saw some sort of ocean of flocks, you guys would be okay with it.
Yeah, or there's actually, she threw out a number of plants, let you kind of decide and mull it over and come
Right.
up with something.
Okay.
Which is avoid designing for you, let you.
No, right. No, I got it.
You can talk to any nursery guy, just tell them when you got there, tell me what tight spread. He may suggest you.
I was gonna say, I assume somebody might want those kinds of rocks. So you probably don't even have to get rid of those, but they don't fit the district.
Mhm.
So with that, we'll continue this.
Yeah, sure.
And on each of these three things, as you get things back to staff, we can actually approve each of these things as separate things too for you, because I think if you
Okay.
have a code violation, it probably helps to get some things checked off of those.
Right.
Yeah. We can, depending on what
And
you get.
it's
some
not
response
the
to
best
that.
time of year for tax.
No, but if you get a read on the venting thing and you get a detail back in the staff about how to just move it or something, then we could probably maybe consider a staff approval or something where they're
Okay.
not even waiting for, or an adequate planting plan, with enough information, there's a potential for staff approval as well. Motion to continue? We got one?
I move to continue 08 HR -23 -01 -0122 24.
I think this is 1-3.
No, 13, I'm sorry. 24 East Northwood Avenue, until next month.
And there's a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Hearing a motion and a second, any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, motion passes. Just keep diligently working with staff on these things, and I think we've got another case with you as well here for HR 23-01-01440 East Northwood Avenue. Is that also correct?
Yes, that's also. Okay, so continue on to the next application, also in the Northwood Park Historic District. The proposed work is the modification of landscaping with new hardscape. Okay, that's right. So again, property received a code violation around that same time. And this is still in the Northwood Park Historic District, so that context of when it was nominated does apply as well. And then the applicant noted that there is a neighboring property that also has some hardscape. So after looking into it, we did find a 1988 OHI form with a photo that shows the neighboring property to the east already having hardscape installed. The photo itself is dated from 1987. The district was not nominated until 1989, so that would have been completed prior to when this was a district. So that would be why that neighboring property looks like that. So not necessarily approved when it was a district. Now, at the business meeting, the commission noted that the hardscape shown next door at 46 East Northwood, again, was added before this became a historic district and would not be approved today. The commission recommended a greenscape option be proposed. And the staff recommendation is to recommend continuing application HR 23-01-014 at 40 East Northwood Avenue to allow the applicant time to revise the application to meet city code and guidelines. Basis for that staff recommendation is the city code standard for site improvements. specifically letter A, as well as the guidelines specifically for historical plants and landscaping on page 83.
Same discussion, right?
It is sort of the same discussion now that the photo we do have on file that shows the house, of course, I think we ascertained that this might be like a form of a railroad tie or something, just zooming in on the photo potentially. And we understand that the house next door has that treatment that you've kind of done. The issue is the house next door had that treatment done before it became a district, not after. So we're in a kind of a scenario where it's a challenge for us. Obviously, those ties kind of existed, and then did your team do the removal then and put the rock in? Or? Okay.
So what do you think of the railroad ties?
We wouldn't, I don't think we would approve them now.
We wouldn't approve them now, and they now.
I'm sorry, would or would not?
Would not. Now, in fact, the way these neighborhoods were designed were to have the sloping lawns like that, and they were consistent. So as you look down the street, they were actually fairly wonderfully designed. They would dig the basements down, use the soil from the basement to build those hills, and then that way, when the cars were parked, you sat on your porch, you overlooked the cars. They were really well thought out, and at the same time, when your neighbors walked down the street, you were sitting on your porch in the summertime, you could talk to them. These neighborhoods were created to really create community. And that's why you have all these intentionally sloping lawns that go down, and they were never intended to have retaining walls. But over time, I realized that happened in order to prevent that continued deterioration of those neighborhoods is why they chose to become part of a historical district.
One of the things that we get a lot of people that really don't want to maintain the sloping front lawn. So we do get a lot of requests to put retaining walls in. But there's also a lot of denials of those retaining walls, just because it's not our personal opinion, it's what is historical precedent.
So would you guys approve something that grows on the sloping thing, but that doesn't need to be cut?
Right, yeah, which is pretty traditional way of handling it. Again, talk to a nursery guy. As you said, the traditional way of doing it a lot was just English ivy. That's why English ivy was so popular. It does require weeding because it's not strong enough to block out all the weeds. They might suggest Pachysandra, myrtle is.
Well, I mean, if you wanted something similar to grass, you could go with like a Pennsylvania sedge, which you do not need to cut. It will maintain kind of the same low height year round.
I got the Pennsylvania part of that.
Pennsylvania sedge.
SEDGE.
That's right.
And would you, in your thought, would you be removing sort of a couple feet at the top, then you just let it kind of grow down it, or is it removing all of this rock?
I mean, you could remove about 50% every other rock or so, and then just give it enough room that it can start to create a mass. You have some plantings that are a little closer together, and then eventually covering the whole thing.
Okay. How are those, I think those are boxwoods up front. How are those? Those
Down tree level,
or is it, I don't know.
those look more like a
Lily turd?
lily turd, yeah.
Okay, yeah, lily, sorry.
And that's another option too. So if you didn't want the sedge, you could go with the lily turd, but you would need more of those. It's a smaller plant.
You're calling that a lily TURF?
That's it. Mhm.
What is the black that I'm seeing at the edge? Is there plastic under those rocks?
Skipping fabric.
It might be something from the,
Here, back out again.
Yeah, I think there is there, even over by the steps. It's probably to keep the Keep the stuff that
So
coming up.
It's a landscape fabric.
I mean, that, yeah, it needs to be tucked and covered.
Yeah, it's not solid. I mean, it's water permeable.
Permeable,
Water
absolutely.
Go,
100%.
otherwise nothing's gonna grow there.
Right, right.
No, it's permeable, and we would slit it like we slit for the lilies.
What about opinion on the large rock? Is it a similar discussion to what we had prior?
Yeah, they'd have to go.
They would have, well, yes, yeah. So the idea is you're either removing all of it and adding more soil, putting in new plants, or taking out about roughly 75% of it, planting and allowing those plants to cover it, so you wouldn't see it. It's okay to have some of that rock underneath. The idea is that we don't need to see it.
Yep.
But talk to a nurseryman
Yes,
and show them the pictures. Talk about soil, watering, drainage. Because you want something that's gonna be, from what I'm hearing, is you want something that's gonna grow naturally. You're not gonna have to water a lot. Or
You're looking for low maintenance too.
right, so talk to a nurseryman and come up with a design. It's ultimately your design.
I think in this case, what we do is we just continue this and allow you time to come back. So motion to continue this?
For HR 23-01-014, 40 East Northwood Avenue, I move to continue, based on, the modifications, presented to before us, to, continue to do additional research on, what appropriate planting is needed for the area.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Hearing a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, motion passes.
Okay, great.
If you have any questions too, you can always relay ideas to staff. You can always give things to staff to get to us for our opinion. It's best to get in for business meetings. We can try to give as much feedback as we can to you so that, by the time you come to a meeting, it's either you come to a meeting, get approved, or even be able to move the staff approval. But if you just keep an open dialogue with Jack, which really gets you through things.
Okay. You said something that contradicts what I remember. We're permitted to come to the business meetings?
You are permitted to come. You are allowed to hear the comments. We don't have an interactive forum like this. If there is a unique scenario where we have maybe a question or two, we may call on you, but we don't have you approach, and you're actually not part of the proceedings generally.
Oh, okay. So
But you are allowed to
I'm
come
allowed
and
to come.
hear all the feedback.
It's optional.
Okay.
If you're not able to make it, staff does send out the business meeting feedback as well.
Are those also broadcast or not?
They're not.
They're not, okay.
It is helpful though, sometimes to hear the comments, I think.
Okay. Okay, yeah, sure, great. And you're with Historic, like where Connie Torbeck is?
Yes, I'm with the city planning, so we're part of the preservation office for that.
Okay, great.
Connie has retired.
Showing my age. My name is Bruce. What's your name?
Jack.
Jacqueline. Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to conceptual applications, 44 West Jeffrey Place. Good evening. If I could have you raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth and testimony before the commission this evening?
Yes,
And if you could state your full name and association with the property for record.
sure. Cynthia Ann Carnes, owner.
Wonderful. You've got a beautiful house. Just say that even before we get a presentation. We love this one.
So this is a conceptual application. The proposal is to replace cracked stained glass of the future front door with new stained glass design. So the existing stained glass appears to be original. The original historic 1930s design when the house was constructed, and that is based on the 1984 Ohio Historic Inventory description, as well as a 1967 MLS photo, which shows the historic entry door. Unfortunately, there is a tree branch going right at the worst spot, but you can see the door. And then the design being consistent with 1930s era stained glass designs. So the guidelines note that stained glass or leaded light windows and doors should be maintained, and the leaded glass does appear to be original and a character-defining feature of the historic home. So staff recommends the historic stained glass be repaired and the original design be maintained per the city code and the guidelines. At the business meeting, the commission asked if the applicant has looked into repair, noting that even with a break in the glass, there are local studios that can repair, such as adding lead strip into the break and leaving the original glass. And the commission asked if the applicant could provide a picture of the stained glass from the interior side, showing the light outwards to better show the colors and design, which the applicant has done. Typically, the commission noted that typically leaded glass was painted on the interior side historically, and that if the leaded glass is historic, the original design would be important and like be integral to the overall house design. And that given the original door present, the stained glass design does appear to be original. So following the business meeting feedback, the applicant has submitted the photos that were requested and also additional notes or response that they have looked into repair, and that she's talking about cost difference, and that the motivation for a redesign rather than a repair is because of the glass design that looks like it might be a ship associated with Christopher Columbus. That's it. And so this is a conceptual application. So the staff recommendation is that the commission should offer design feedback that can be utilized by the applicant to further refine the proposal for review at a future meeting. And so no action is required. The general basis for the staff recommendation is the City Code 3116.11 standards for alteration, including number 2, the distinguishing characteristics of the property shall not be destroyed. The removal or alteration of any historic material or distinctive architectural features shall be avoided whenever possible. Number 3, each property shall be recognized as a product of its own time. Alterations that have no historical basis and which seek to create an earlier period shall be discouraged. Number 5, distinctive stylistic features and examples of craftsmanship that characterize the property shall be treated with sensitivity. And number 6, deteriorated architectural features shall be repaired rather than replaced whenever possible. In the event replacement is necessary, the new material shall match the material being replaced in composition, design, color, texture, and other visual qualities. That repair or replacement of missing architectural features shall be based on accurate duplications of features substantiated by historic, physical, or pictorial evidence, rather than conjectural designs or the availability of different architectural elements from other structures. And also from the guidelines regarding stained glass on pages 58 to 59. And they just go on to describe retaining glass as well for windows or doors where there is leaded glass.
Great. What would you like to add?
I understand, and it's not a cost issue. I mean, there's really very little cost difference between repairing and replacing. It's just a few $100s. For me, and I will add, we bought the house during the pandemic. I did not see the little round window in the inside of the closet, to be completely transparent, no pun intended, when we looked at the house. So the whole Columbus thing did not really drop. The realtor told us it was designed after a Portuguese. I don't even know. Somehow Columbus did not enter my thinking. As we were looking at the door to have it, to do some interior painting, I realized there was a crack in the glass. I had somebody look at it. I've talked to Franklin Art Glass. And I thought about having a compass rose designed, which I think I submitted a photo of, because I think that does, and there's all kinds of compass roses in the world. I think that is in keeping with sort of the nautical aspect that you see on the interior features with the round molding and other nautical elements without evoking Christopher Columbus specifically. So that's where I am.
But you said it was a Portuguese ship.
Well, that's what they told us, and then I got to be honest. When you look at so that's the front door. Right above the front door, and I don't know if you can see it in the photo. There's a little balcony and there's that little window with it's clearly one of Christopher Columbus's ships up there, and it's, yeah, that's
Right
it.
there.
Of course, again, sort of semi-hidden by a tree, and because it's in a closet, it's just not something that I actually gave much thought to at all.
Or
So-
this one doesn't have any flags on it.
No, it really doesn't. It doesn't.
So, I mean, in my, okay, this is, I mean, our charge is, we have to keep emotions aside, we have to keep,
Sure.
politics, whatever it is aside, and just based on what it is, and it's historical, I guess my sense is that and if it can be replaced, right, then, or repaired, sorry, if it can be repaired, then my goal would be to get it repaired. I mean, again, this is no opinion about Christopher Columbus or anything, right? It is a piece of architecture, piece of design, art, should be repaired if you can. Just my opinion.
So I understand that, and I guess, I'm not gonna go down the obvious analogies, but, if it were something more objectionable, and I guess that depends on your point of view, would the position be the same?
Well, I go back to, there are plenty of churches I've been in over my lifetime so far where there are swastikas represented in big glass windows, and they had a different meaning in a different day and a different time.
Absolutely.
Though it would be completely inappropriate to sort of eradicate them just because the meaning sort of changed, even though that would be not something we embrace as a society today. What is fascinating is there's still a nautical theme to this house. There's a lot of things that are in the nautical theme, nautical keeping. And I bet there are hundreds of ships that look like this from the backside.
Mhm.
And I would even think that,
Thousands.
right, and I would even think maybe the ship, even in the upper window, that just simply the Spanish ink was, the Spanish sort of cross on it could be even beyond just Columbus's ship. So, I would hate to sort of cave to saying that to state, because there's no reference to Columbus specifically on it.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And, anything that was probably a Spanish ship probably had that cross on it.
This one looks like the Mayflower.
But a lot of ships did, that's the thing,
Oh,
is, a ship of a vintage of an era like that. And this is kind of a caricature thing. To me, this is, even if, I entirely get some of the struggles in preservation right now based on civil issues today in our worlds and unrest and, following all the debates in the South about removing statues and, removing our own Columbus statue here.
Right here.
And saying, what do you do with it now? But then likewise, I go, boy, if I were in your shoes, I mean, this is such a pristine example of a well-preserved home. That, it's sort of a fun nautical theme though, I want to know why the person originally thought they wanted a nautical themed home, period.
You could always put some lettering under it, say, it was
Not
Captain,
Columbus.
no, Captain Hook ship. And do a little Peter Pan thing.
But there's some deeper story that maybe you or I won't uncover today, but, somebody 100 years from now might go, aha, this was the reason this home was
Maybe they were
nautical
saying
themed. It may not even be anything to do with Columbus. So,
Right. You mentioned symbols and how they change and stuff.
Right,
There are swastikas carved on the buttresses of St. Cloud Cathedral.
sure.
In St. Cloud, Minnesota. When it was built with the idea that was a Native American symbol of the Ojibwe people. And it was to bring unity and to incorporate ancient Ojibwe symbols into the church, because there were still, or still are, communities there. So it was a very bridging symbol. And they have decided to retain them because it's part of the local history and they know it. I mean, there are occasionally people from out of town that get all offended, but it was a history. It was a very positive history when those were carved.
Well, in the Hindu faith, the swastika is like a cross.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
We're really careful and look at the historical context.
Yeah.
right. So the issue here too, though, is that you've got some glass fragments that are broken across
Yes.
the doors.
Yes. Yes.
And I know that from having looked at cathedral windows or other glass windows, sometimes they let in over the crack, just a strip on both sides, and it just adds to sort of like, that's what happens. The fragment broke, it was big, and you let a piece in on two sides, and it makes it weather tight, and it sort of just adds another lead line to it, but you don't actually remove any historic material.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting when we close the door, I mean, you see things moving in there. It's
Yeah.
pretty alarming, frankly.
Another
What-
option might be glass epoxy. And
Okay.
it's used for stained glass.
Yeah.
Has Franklin Art Glass given you an opinion about
Yes,
viability for repair?
yeah, they thought it needed to be disassembled and
Disassemble, put
reassembled.
back together, probably.
They're amazing.
No, I
They're
mean,
the
I've
best around,
used
so
it
yeah, they're-
before, I get it.
Yeah.
And there are others now actually doing some good window work too. There are other, we can't actually endorse it then, but I
Sure.
can make sure that
Sure.
that's usually pretty clear, but, the challenge for us is that it's not like the window's missing, and I have to say, by the way, your proposal for a new window is
Mhm.
exquisitely beautiful. I love your, I'm
No,
not gonna
well,
pick.
I was trying to
but-
be consistent
Right,
with the
and
theme.
just, so any, I think, opinion we're giving you isn't because this is an ugly design by any means. I mean, I was like, wow, I wish every new build would propose a window just like this.
Well, yeah, no, that's right.
And we'd all
So-
be better. But, it's one of those things that, when we look at it's historical material that is the fabric that is there. I think, I think I'm sort of hearing more people would advocate that this really be just repaired as is.
Yeah, and yeah, the philosophy of it and all that, that's a policy level kind of decision, and that's kind of beyond our purview. What does it denote? What are the connotations? I mean, that's just not something we here can vote on or discuss, I think, and we went into it, but.
Does that sort of help? you see-
Not really.
I mean, if you had your heart set on replacing it, that probably doesn't give you.
No, it
what you
really
wanna
doesn't,
hear.
you know.
But at least, I mean, if we were asked to vote on something like this, at least I think it would shed light on how probably a vote might happen.
And we could not set a precedent
Correct.
that someone removes a stained glass window because they don't like it.
It's not that I don't like it. I mean, I think it's a beautiful piece of glass. It's just, it's the symbolism of it. And I understand your arguments fully well.
Right, but it's only you and you alone that I can understand is making that relationship. It's a Portuguese ship. It doesn't look much different than a Dutch ship. It doesn't look much different than any ship built in 300 years or that brought pilgrims that did all kinds of.
Well, I did
historic
not
things.
mean to, and I apologize for interrupting, to imply that it was Portuguese. I believe it's Spanish. The house is a Spanish style house. I mean, it's got tiled roof. It's a Spanish house.
Okay.
Let's be real.
Okay.
You know, I just didn't have my mind in the right place when I looked at the house, and frankly, I probably wouldn't have bought it if the penny had dropped. So that's, I understand your issue. I work in research compliance. I understand compliance. I understand rules. I get it. But I also do believe there's a time and place for thinking through, context. And that's why I'm here.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, and again, I don't think we are saying one way or the other, but I think that context discussion happens at a different level, like it's like shaking up city policy and stuff, which is not our charge, right? So, I mean.
Yeah, and unfortunately, given that it's the entire house that is modeled off of Spanish style.
Right.
Right, so then to then remove this one piece that the whole house is being based off of, I don't know.
Well, there's a lot of Spanish style architecture that doesn't have Columbus looking ships as part of the,
Oh.
Yeah, and I get it, like.
Yeah, yeah.
Right, just for the record,
Yeah.
completely understand.
And we're not, right, we're not, but the problem is there's nothing that says explicitly even Columbus on this house.
Okay.
And to be 100 years after him or 200 years after him, or decipher differentiations in ships. And then, if you remove one element that you say is Columbus related, well, then at what point do we start saying, well, all the other Spanish elements should start coming off this house? And it's sort of a spiral effect.
If it were a bronze statue, 18 feet high in the front yard of Christopher Columbus, that could be another issue. You know,
And then protecting history may be like allowing the removal to a safe space.
Yeah.
That's.
Which I would be fine with if somebody wanted to, trust me.
And then just to tie over the general feedback, if you did go for repair, that could be staff approved, so we need to come back to the commission.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, something has to be done before it falls in or out.
we have to make a motion and then,
It's just conceptual.
oh, it's just conceptual. Oh, then we don't have to make a motion.
Yep.
Okay, I think we made it pretty clear where.
Yep. Okay. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
Are there any items of new business on this evening?
No, that is the last item on the agenda today.
Okay, do I have a motion to end?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Adjourn.